Want to speak real French from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at FrenchPod101.com.
Hey guys, it's Pierre from France and welcome back for more videos on French learning. We will talk about stems of verbs ending with OIR in French today. OIR, sometimes there is an E, sometimes there is no E. So we will focus on all verbs that ends with the sound OIR, OIR. Because even if there is an E, it's the same pronunciation. OIR, OIR. Verbs from the third group are infamous for one thing. It's that the stem is always changing. As you can see, we will see different stems. And it's annoying because you need to learn by heart all those stems. And sometimes you also need to learn the endings. But today we will not focus on the endings of like when you change the form, like the conjugaison. We will not focus on the conjugaison, but on the stem, which is the most important thing. If you remember the stem, like the specific stem, you're all good and you will be able to use all those verbs with OIR at the end. So, without further ado, let's get started with first category, avoir, which is like mainly se voir or devoir. We've got two main verbs with that in French. It's like recevoir, like to receive, and devoir, like I must or sometimes I shall. So here, you've got that. Also, note that when in English you've got a verb with Yves at the end, like in receive, like recevoir, receive. Sometimes in French, the translation is with se voir, to receive, recevoir, to deceive, décevoir. You see, it's quite similar. So those verbs are the same logic. So for all the verbs, I will define this table and you will see different things. Here you've got the tenses, présent, imparfait, futur, present, imperfect and future. And here you've got the person, like if it's singular, je, tu, il, I, you, il, like he or she, like il or elle, if it's a feminine person, like if it's feminine. Here you've got the plural, and I will distinguish two categories, like nous, vous, like we and you, plural you, and il, like they, because sometimes, as you can see here, it's a bit different, it's not the same. So I do the distinction, but here you can see that you don't need to do the distinction. So, okay, you need to remember this and this, tenses and the person. So here, with this, in the blue part, you see what is from the verb. So here, the blue part is something that is, we don't care, it's like the original stem of the verb, like this is the infinitive form, this is the ending, and this is like the original stem. So here you've got recevoir or devoir. But here I'm going to use the example of apercevoir, 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 which means like to see from a far distance. Like when you see something, like, oh, I see something. So you can use apercevoir. Like j'aperçois quelqu'un dans la rue, or I see someone in the street. So you've got this. And for the present, you've got aperçoit. The form for present and singular, je, tu, il, it's like aperçoit. So here the blue part is from the verb, and then this is the modification of the form of the stem that you need to apply for this group. And then here you see three dots. It's like you need to add the correct ending. So usually it's like SST. Like for many verbs, the ending, like from the third group, usually the ending is like S for je, S again for tu, and T for il. So if you want to say j'aperçois, j'aperçois, it's je, so S. If you want to use tu, tu aperçois, you add an S. And here, if you want to say il aperçoit, you add a T. So here you've got the blue part, which is from the verb, this, which is like for all the verbs from this category, and then you add the ending. So if you want to use the same logic with devoir, like I must, like you take the D here, you add wa, so doit, D plus wa, so doit, and then you add the correct ending. But here you can see that I added something with si. You need to add something that you don't add with the D. You just need to add this, what we call cédille. This little thing is a specific C. It means that you have to pronounce it as an S. And you do it only with when there is an O after that. So remember that for se voir, verbs with like that, you need to add this little thing with when there is an O after that. So it only concerns those two forms. So this is for the first category. Then you've got nous and vous, like we and you. This time you have to use apercevoir. So it means like apercevoir. So for the verb apercevoir or for the verb recevoir, to receive, you want to say nous recevons, we receive. You say nous, so you take this, nous reç, and then you add œuvre, so nous recevons, and then you add the ending. So basically for nous it's on, O-N-S, and for vous it's E-Z. It's always like that in French. So this is the three dots you see here, like depending on that, but it's always O-N-S for nous and E-Z for vous. And then you've got apercevons, nous apercevons, or here for recevoir, receive, we receive, nous recevons. So here, this, you take the EV and then the ending. So another way to see that is like you just get rid of the oir and you've got your form for here. And for the last one, for plural, for de, it's the same than the first one. And the ending for present in French, it's ENT, like for all the verbs. ENT. So aperçoit with ENT. They, like they must. Il doit. Il, plural I with an S at the end of il doit. So here you've got a V, a missing V. But the ending is still ENT, so aperçoivent. So here, they, like they must, you say, so D, it's the blue part, so you add just D instead of this. D, O-I-V, doivent, and then the ending. So ils doivent. They must, ils doivent. E-N-T for that. And then for the imperfect, it's the same form than for present when you use nous or vous. It's aperçoivent, or devent, or recevent. So for example, je recevais, je devais, tu devais. Here, it's always the same. You need to add, you take the blue part, you add EV, and then you add the ending, and the ending for imparfait, it's always the same in French. It's, you can see that in the previous video, but it's like AIS, AIS, AIT. So this is for singular. Then you've got EIONS, IEZ, and then you've got AIENT for the last one. AIENT. So basically you remember once the ending for imperfect and then you're all good. What you need to do is then to learn the stem. So here it's easy because the stem is always the same. And as you can see, it's always the same stem for imperfect. So you just remember the ending for all the verbs of imparfait, and then you remember the specific stem, and you're good. Then future, it's the same. As you can see, you don't care about the person. It's always just one stem that you need to remember. And here, it's apercevoir. And as you can see, there is an or, and or is the mark of the future in French. So here, apercevoir, you just remember that. So with devoir, you want to say, I will have to do, because in English you cannot say I will must, so I will have to do. Je devrais, so you take the blue part, D, you add œuvre, devrait, and then you add the ending of the future. So I guess you just remember the ending for the future. It's like imperfect. You just remember always the same ending, and if you know the stem, you can do everything with the future. So 3 different stems, like 4 different stems that you need to remember. Here, aperçoit and aperçoivent, apercevent and apercevoir. Those stems are quite similar, just like the plural, the future or. So this is all for this one, for this category. The next one is with valoir. Like valoir itself is a verb, and you've got a lot of verbs that are made with prefix. If you add a prefix in front of valoir, you've got a new verb. Like if you add pré in front of valoir, prévaloir, prévaloir, it's mean like prevault, and you've got the same logic. So remember the logic for valoir. The logic is super easy, like in comparison with the first one. You just need to remember 3 different stems. One for the future, one for the imperfect, and it's the same for the plural for present, and the form of the present, the stem of the present for just singular person. So here, you just remember VIU, vo, and then you add the endings. So here, I said like this, usually for the present, it's always like SST. Here, the ending for the present. It's almost always the case. Here, because since there is a vowel, it's not an S but an X. X and S are sometimes quite similar letters. It's just like S. X is like the S when there is a vowel before. So here there is a vowel, U, so you add just X. So here it's XXT. Here it was SST for the ending. Here is XXT. But don't focus too much. It's not the purpose of this video. Here we care about the stem, not really the ending. But so here we've got vaux. Je vaux, like you can use it for like it costs. I didn't translate it. Like valoir, it means like to cost. Like one of the translation, because you've got another verb, you can say coûter, which is first group verb, er, coûter. But here you can also use valoir in French, which is a possible translation for to cost. So here, il vaut, like this car costs, I don't care like how much. And you say in French, cette voiture, this car, cette voiture vaut, with a T. And then for the plural, it's just you, instead of the U, it's an L. And then it's the same ending. So like here, the ending is like ONS, EZ, and ENT. Like if you know how to transform a verb for present, you know all these endings, those endings, so nothing special for that. Then imperfect, it's exactly the same. You remember the endings of imparfait. It's like ion, ye, I'm not gonna spell it again, but you remember the stem, which is similar from the plural for present, and then you add the endings that you've learned by heart, and you've got your imperfect form of valoir. And for future, as you can see here, there is again an or, the future or, and it's vaudre, like ça vaudra, like it will cost, ça vaudra. So here you add the ending that again, it's always the same for the future. Future and imperfect are really easy. You just learn the endings once, and then if you know the stem, you can do everything. So for valoir, it's vaudre. You remember that. So this one was quite easy. Let's move on to 2 other ones, like vouloir and pouvoir, like really important verbs. Like vouloir, I want, like to want, and pouvoir, to be able to, or can. But be careful, because in French, unlike can, pouvoir is not an auxiliary. So what you need to do is more to think that like it's to be able to. So here again, 3 stems. So P, so like you can see that as like the ouloir category. When I say ouloir, I mean like this is ou and then war, or ou and war. So here you've got different letters, but it's like ouloir. So for those verbs, again, for present and singular, you need to remember just the first letter, like V or P, and then you add EU. Like je veux, I want. Je veux, you take the V and you add EU. And again, here it's like SST, but since this is like here, you've got the vowel, it's XXT. So here, you remember the endings, the correct endings, and you've got peut, je peux, tu peux, il peut. Like same pronunciation, except that here XXT. So here you've got the P from the first letter of pouvoir, but for vouloir it's the same, you use the first letter, vouloir, V, so veux, je veux. And then for the plural, and the same for the imperfect, the form that you need to use, the stem, is pouve. So you just get rid of the war. So here it would be for this one, vouloir, vouloir. So you take this, you take out of the war, voul. So the form here would be, the stem would be voul. And then you add the endings that are always the same. Again, on, et, like EZ, and e, I-E, like ENT, sorry, here, ENT. And then for the imperfect, you know the endings, so you can do it. So pouve, you remember that, pouve or voul. And then for the future, like the logic is a bit different from the two verbs, so you just need to remember. For the stem for future is like pour for this one, like to I will be able to. And then you add the ending, the classic ending of the future, and then you've got voudre, vouloir, voudre, like I want, I will want. So you just remember voudre. And as you can see here, there is the or of the future. So here it's double or, and here it's or. Let's move on to the next one, savoir. This one is kind of unique. You need to remember, again, 3 stems. So the first one is c'est, for this part of the table. S-I, S-A-I, je, tu, il. So here it's S, S, T. So last time I said that because there is a vowel before, it was an X, 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 T, X, X, T. But it's only true if it's a U. So be careful. I said that, but it's only with a U that you need to add XX. Here, it's an I, so it's still S. So here it's S, S, T for the present, S, S, T. And then for the plural, it's still the same, on, et, e, like E-N-T. And you use the form savent. Ils savent, like they know, the ils savent, with E-N-T at the end. For the imperfect, it's the same here. And then for the future, it's like sort. So you need to remember that there is the U here. It's not a V, it's a U. So like I will know. Sort, je saurai, I will know. So here again, the R of the future. So yeah, I didn't say, but savoir means like to know, to know. So this one is kind of unique. And another one which is unique is voir, like to see. So you need to remember voi, V-O-I, and then you add the S, S-T. And then for the plural, you see that it's the same form. So you hear V-O-I and you add E-N-T of that. But for nous and vous, and for the imperfect, the stem is the same, V-O-Y. So if you want to say, like we were watching, like we watched, you can say nous voyons, voyons, V-O-Y, and then you add the ending of the imperfect nous, like first person plural, and it's ion. So here you've got voyons, so it would be V-O-Y-E-O-N-S. And be careful because it's quite similar to the form voyons, which is the same person but for present. So be careful, voyons, if there is an E, it's imperfect. But the pronunciation is really similar. Voyons, nous voyions. Like for the second one, the E is a bit longer, but you don't really care about that. Like you can guess with the context, like when you hear it, based on the context, usually there is no, like you cannot miss it if you understand the rest of the sentence. Even for French people, sometimes you don't hear if it's the form, so don't really care about that. And then you've got the future, VERR. This is the form that you need to remember. Again, the R of the future, but here it's double R. So this is all for this one. Then you've got two tricky verbs, falloir and pleuvoir. Falloir, it's like, it's difficult to translate in English, but you can translate it by out to or like must. But this verb is specific because there is only one person, it's il. You cannot use elle, it's only il. And it's the same for pleuvoir, which means to rain. Only il. Like it's like in English, you don't say you rain, you say it rains. So here you've got the form for plural, imperfect, and future. So it's like faut, fall, faudre, and here pleu, pleuve, pleuvre. So it's the same here and here, except that here there is an or. So those ones are like kind of specific. You can remember it. I'm not going to explain, there is nothing to explain for those ones. But here is another verb, a really tricky one, asseoir, which is probably one of the only verbs in French that have different stems for the same usage. So I'm going to just explain one usage. So here, instead of assied, this is one stem that you can use here, but another stem that is sometimes used is assoit. I'm not going to explain it, but be careful. So here I'm going to use one of the form, like the easiest one. So here it's like assied, and then you add the S, or you add nothing, because after a D you add nothing. It's not T, it's like you add nothing after a D. So here present. Then you've got the future, the imperfect and the plural. The form is the same with EY. And then you've got F, acier, acier. So here plural, future with the R, and then the accent. So this is like, if you see only this table, it's not really tricky, but be careful because sometimes you can see other forms, like assoit with O-I here instead of I-E-D. So be careful with that, but you should remember that, just this table, and you will be fine. And then I just talk about verbs with war at the end, but I want to talk about verbs with IR at the end. So here, you've got boire and croire. So what you need to remember is like bois, bois, same here, like croix, croix. And then boire, croire, it's the same here for the future. It's like just you get rid of the E. Here you get rid of the RE, 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 RE. And the only difference is for the imperfect and the plural of nous and vous, where you need to learn by heart. It's a bit different. It's buve or croy. So you've got the different endings, the different stems that you need to remember. But the logic is the same for the rest of it. And that's all for the verbs with war with an E. So we've seen different categories, like some of them are not categories, like for this, savoir, voir, or asseoir, or even boire, croire. It's a bit different, but those ones are quite similar. So what you need to remember is, you've got stems to remember. And if you remember those stems, like you need to learn them by heart, there is no logic, and you know the endings, everything will be fine and you will get it. So here, you've got the first category, avoir, then you've got valoir, and then you've got vouloir, pouvoir, savoir, voir, croire, boire. I forgot to translate that. It's like to drink, and this is to believe. And this is to sit. So here you've got those categories. And one thing that I want to add, last thing, is if you use a verb that ends with voir, like for example, prévoir, which means like to foresee, or to forecast, like weather forecast, prévoir, prévoir la météo forecast. So here, prévoir, you use the same logic. So here, it's more a category of all verbs with voir, but it's not the same than this. Be careful. Well, that's all for today. I hope now you can better understand verbs with OIR at the end. If you like this video, you can click on the like button and leave a comment on the comment sections down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can still subscribe with the button. And if you want more resources on French learning, you can go on our website, FrenchPod101.com. You will find a lot of resources to improve your French. It was Pierre. See you guys.